Game ones are in the book. We're here to break down and, of course, overreact to what we've seen from both conferences so far. Game 2 of the Lakers-Nuggets series goes underway tonight, which should be tons of fun, but we're here to preview that as well. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Bakari Steve. How you doing? How you feeling on this Tuesday morning?
Yeah, I feel great. The great game last night. Jimmy Buckets was in full effect. NBA draft lottery this past few days. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, and then I also said Thursday morning. Correction, right? It is Thursday. It's getting to all of us here, but this is your early reminder to support us. You see the socials on the screen. Instagram. We're on YouTube Shorts. TikTok, go follow us there, as we always have exclusive content, and we post almost daily over on those pages, right? But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. Let's get into some winners and losers, but first we got some news. We're going to start here with, of course, you mentioned it, but the Spurs win Victor Wembanyama. It is interesting to note here, got a couple notes here. The Portland Trailblazers, they missed out on the number one pick by one ball. I'm not sure how that all works, but the Portland Trailblazers basically were right there to get Victor Wembanyama. It's also interesting to note that since the new lottery system began, I believe that was the Zion draft, the NBA team with the worst record hasn't received the number one pick yet, right?
Thanks NBA lottery. You screwed us out of a chance of Zion Williamson.
But this would have been the Pistons' year, and they would have had Victor Wembanyama, but they fall all the way to 5. Again, we're going to talk about winners and losers here today, so we'll get into them a little bit later. But Victor Wembanyama, he joins the young core of Keldon Johnson, Malachi Branham, Jeremy Sohan. He's no doubt going to be the guy on this team, and he's going to be built around in San Antonio. But a stat that I saw was that the night after the draft, the Spurs received 2,500 deposits for season tickets, as well as 700 downloads for the team app. The Victor Wembanyama effect is already in motion.
Yeah, whenever you have somebody that you're comparing the greatness of their prospect to LeBron James, and we all know LeBron James was the chosen one as a 16-year-old, you know that you have a special talent on your hands. Obviously, with a talent like this, it's not you're not expecting him to be okay in the league. You're expecting him to be a generational type player. There have already been analysts and scouts that have said he if he stays healthy, he could be one of the best players of all time, which is insane, obviously, because he's still he's 18 playing pro over in France. He hasn't played a single up and down, running down and back on an NBA court. But his talent, the potential, it's
undeniable.
It's generational for sure. And in a draft where Scoot Henderson is a clear number one in any other draft. Sometimes you would talk about maybe Scoot Henderson as a franchise point guard. I think he's better than what Ja was in college right now. So whenever you're able to completely shut down another potential talent like that in the draft because you are so good, it's crazy to see.
Yeah, and this does remind me a lot of that Ja and Zion draft, where Zion was the unicorn of it, a guy that was 6'6", but can jump out of the gym quite literally, jump out of his shoes quite literally, as he did that there in Duke. But this reminds me a lot where the best player might be the number 2 pick, but if you're that number 1 team, you have to take the shot on that unicorn. And Victor Wembanyama is just that here in this draft. But guys at his size typically don't pan out well in the league. Whether if it's health or whatever. We talked about it before the league or the podcast. A guy like Chet Holmgren, he doesn't have the potential of a Victor Wembanyama, but a guy that was slender frame, really tall, had a skill set, but he's not that well built, at least physically yet, right? And you saw, he had a knee injury early in the season. Or before the season, right?
Yeah, it was a foot injury trying to guard LeBron and Pro-Am.
Right, and he was out for the entire year. But good news for Wemby is that the Spurs have probably the best developmental team in the NBA.
Yeah.
So he's going to be set up for the future. Just might take a year or two to get physically ready, right?
Yeah.
Get to that size. But my question to you, really quick, is can Wemby be that next generational player in your eyes? Or, give me a pro comp for Wemby, as mine might be a hot take.
Generational type player. I'd hope to see it with all the hype he has built around him. But it's hard for me to buy into like a greatest player of all time when I haven't even seen him play. I don't have anything. I haven't seen him play in the NBA. I should say. We see him in France, but
that's not NBA talent.
Exactly. So, like you said, with these taller guys, with these guys who have those slender frames like Chet, Bol. There's a reason we always compare him to Kevin Durant. There hasn't been another one since. Everybody wants to be like, oh, well, the next tall, lanky wing or tall big who has a skill set is KD. Well, there's only been one KD, and there's a reason why there's been multiple failed attempts at recreating that. But if I had to pick a pro comp, I am probably going to pick somewhere within the Bol and Chet range, with a little bit of Evan Mobley on the defensive side of the ball, because he has quick feet. He can't, for a 7'5" guy.
Right.
Wembanyama is somebody who I feel like it's kind of hard to put one player on him, so you have to throw like a mix of players. And good thing is we are getting a lot of lanky bigs with great skill set entering the league now that we can kind of compare him to. Hopefully, though, he can be better than those with the hype he has.
I mean, on a base level, we've never seen anything like Wembanyama. We've seen a 6'11", 7-foot Kevin Durant, but we've never seen a 7'5" guy do arguably what Kevin Durant can do on the basketball court. But for me, my pro comp is probably going to be like a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, a guy that's 7'3". He can't handle the ball. He handles the ball way better than Kristaps, but I think that's going to be probably a Victor Wembanyama spot where he's a top 30, top 40 player in the league. He brings defense. He brings that shooting, that outside shooting, even though he only shot like 28% from three over in France.
Yeah.
So that's something he's going to have to improve on. But I think for me, a guy, a realistic expectation for Wembanyama is a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, a guy that's a perennial all-star every year. And let's just get this straight. He's not LeBron James.
Yeah.
Let's just get that straight.
Even then, Kristaps still has a lot of... Kristaps did a lot of... Kristaps was skinny, but I don't think he was as skinny as Wembanyama is right now. And since then, he's put on a lot of weight, too. He can hold his own in the paint. But, Wembanyama, I mean, we're seeing it, as Cavs fans, we see it in Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley's been in the league 2 years. He still hasn't, put on that much weight. It's going to take Wembanyama a long time to put on the necessary weight, probably enough to where he can, kind of like Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid was one of those centers who he shot too many threes. Then once he started getting once he started staying in the paint, staying in that, below post area, he was able to change the dynamic of his game. I feel like that's going to have to be a change that Wembanyama has to take earlier in his career to stay healthier, and to be better. But he's going to have to put on that strength.
As Chuck would say, just stay away from them San Antonio women. Moving over to Andre Iguodala, a guy that Max Kellerman seemed to love here in his analytic career. A guy who played for 4 total teams. He was a 4-time NBA champion, 1-time Finals MVP, maybe the worst Finals MVP of all time, and a 1-time All-Star. Iguodala is officially announced his retirement from the NBA after 19 great seasons. He's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, especially in the NBA, as they let everybody in. But what is your favorite moment from Iggy in his career? Maybe was it stealing that Finals MVP from Steph, or was it some random moment?
Probably,
or least favorite moment?
I have to go with 2. One of them being that crossover into the
that was exactly what I was going to go to.
He was
Wilson
in Denver.
Chandler.
Yeah, and then I think it was he was in a dunk contest, and he was running basically from the tunnel. AI threw him a lob off the back side of the backboard, and Iggy did a double clutch windmill dunk in a dunk contest.
Yes.
So when you're younger and you're watching YouTube and you see just random highlights of Andre Iguodala out of all people, those are the first 2 that came to my mind, other than getting blocked by LeBron James.
Right, that's probably my favorite moment from Iggy in his career. But he was always one of those guys that it's like, man, we really lost to Andre Iguodala. He was that guy that in those Warriors and Cavs finals, he always made the shot that
he'd have 5 points, and he had 5 points in the last 45 seconds.
Right, he would make the threes when they counted. But moving over here to the Fallen Dynasty, great career, by the way, for Andre Iguodala, but a team he played for the majority of his career was the Golden State Warriors. And I will say that since May of 2014, that is when Steve Kerr took over from Mark Jackson as the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, joining the trio that we know today of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Since that point, they've had 7 playoff appearances, 4 NBA titles, and they've only been eliminated from the playoffs 3 total times, right? Twice by LeBron, as in the finals, and this a couple weeks ago. Can you name the other one? Quick trivia, put you on the spot.
Toronto Raptors.
The Toronto Raptors, right, absolutely. And still, this team's only been eliminated out of 7 years 3 times, and 2 of them were in the finals. That just shows the greatness that this team has. as out of these last 7 years, whether they've been to the finals 6 times, I want to say, or 5 times. Regardless, I think 6 times, correct?
Yeah, they've been there 6 because Steph has 2 losses. Steph is 4-2.
Right.
Yeah.
At least 5 or 6 times, whatever, right? But Steph Curry, he's 35. Klay Thompson and Draymond, respectively, are also 33. This trio is only getting older, and yet they still, in total, make about $114 million a year, taking up the majority of the Warriors' cap space, right? Rightfully so. But they were just eliminated. Klay's showing that those knee injuries are that's taking a lot off of his game that we knew and loved. They're in the prime of that Warriors dynasty. Draymond's up for an extension. We don't know what he's going to do except for podcasting. They have tons of young talent on this roster that they haven't untapped yet, right? Do you see them running it back, or if so, was this actually their last dance?
I see them running it back, but it's more like you're getting grandfathered in, especially in Draymond's case. I think Draymond, he may even take a pay cut. He may say, we still have a shot. But, if when you look at the roster, like you said, Steph is 35, Klay is 33, and he's been regressing for a few years. Draymond is 33, and, he regresses. I think it is time to move in a younger direction for them. That would make the most sense. Obviously, you can still do that when you have Steph Curry. You can Steph Curry, no matter how old he is, can always be a bridge type of player. But I think at this point in their run, Klay and Draymond should be expendable and return for younger stars or younger assets. Instead, they're keeping them on, and I feel like unfortunately they might keep them on too long. You already have guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Jordan Poole upset with how things are being run, and they feel like they aren't being given a fair chance, especially because they're younger. You don't want to drive the rest of your younger roster away, and you don't have as much youth as you have vets anymore. So I hope that there's a way that the Warriors can maintain their big three while also bridge into the future, but it doesn't, we all know how the league works. It probably won't be able to work like that.
Right, and I mean, for the basketball fan in me, I think we can all agree Steph Curry's still in his prime, even if it's the latter half of it. So on a base level, it's like, Steph Curry's the greatest shooter of all time. He still can compete at a high level. Do whatever you have to do to win another championship. But just the nostalgic fan in me, and we don't see it a lot nowadays with players just playing with one team for their entire career. I think, unfortunately, Steph might just have to, take his play to a higher level, which is a lot to ask for a player that's olding, and he's already 35. But a part of me just wants this trio to just finish their careers together in Golden State, even if that means Klay and Dre have to come off the bench and take a pay cut. But again, those guys have championship DNA. I doubt they would, at this point, take a pay cut in their careers.
Right.
But moving over, as some of you guys know, back in 2020, the NBA went into that bubble because of COVID-19 after the suspended season. The final 4 teams in both conferences are the same 4 teams that we have left in 2023. Many believe that due to the neutral site and that there was no home crowds, the bubble was a weak ring or a weak championship. This is a conversation that's been going on for years, but on the flip side, others believe that that was the highest level of basketball. That all these players could focus on was basketball. Day in and day out, that's all they could do was wake up, go on their phones, but then it was practice, film, basketball games, right? That's all they could do. Which side of the coin are you on? Do you believe it was a weak championship? Do you believe no home crowds really made it an easier run? Or do you believe that was like one of the highest forms of basketball?
I think you could take a little bit of something from everybody's point of the argument. I think, obviously the no home crowds and it's the playoffs, it does, you're at a neutral site. No team is feeling pressure from fans either way going forward.
Unless you're Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
He was arguing with the babies.
Yeah, well, but yeah, there isn't any pressure from your fans or the opponent team's fans. There isn't, any high pressure situation where you can't even hear, the guy to your right. But at the same time, we did have some basketball classics in the bubble, not just the playoffs. I mean, there was bubble T.J. Warren, there was Damian Lillard. That was when Devin Booker really started his run. Seeing the player he is now. Guys like Jamal Murray. We always say bubble Jamal Murray is back. I don't think he's the same as he was in the bubble because he was scoring 50 points. But Bubble Murray, he is making a little bit of return. Donovan Mitchell was going really good and was doing really good in the bubble. But I think there was high-level basketball being played, but I do think some dynamics of it were a little bit easier. But, I mean, obviously, you have outside forces like COVID. Guys like Paul George have openly admitted that was a struggle for their mental health when all you can do is sit inside and think about basketball. Sometimes you just need to be able to get out, and some players are able to adapt to that more than others. So
yeah, I mean, I guess that leads me to the point. A lot of people. This brings us to the LeBron argument where it was a Mickey Mouse ring, right, as it was in Disney and it was a bubble. But to me, I think like you said, it was a mixture of both where the home crowds does play a part. We're going to talk about that later with the Mile High advantage. But, I mean, I think it was maybe the highest level of basketball we're going to get, just strictly because of these 1% of the 1%. These guys are, there's only 450 people in the world that can make an NBA team, right? And for these guys to be locked into a bubble this is the playoff team. So these are the top of the 1%, right? And these are all this talent is just in one spot. All they can do is play basketball, which is something, that's their job. But I agree with you, though, with their mental health. Some players might have played worse in the bubble because they don't have that outside experience, because they can't go and really get away from the game of basketball 24/7. But to me, it wasn't a Mickey ring. I think that's just everybody had the same circumstances, and one team just prevailed. Happened to be the only guy that can argue with Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I do think as well. Whoever won that ring, there probably would have been an asterisk by it. There are different asterisks in NBA history for certain rings, whether it's a lockout season or whatever. I think even though obviously there is the Mickey ring that everybody refers to as that ring. But I think, whether Jimmy won it, whether Jason Tatum won it, I think there always would have been it was a bubble. How much credit are you really giving him? I do think too, some of those, I think the performance of the bubble doesn't get as much attention or the flowers, it may deserve, because of the fact that I remember watching it on TV. It was a little boring just watching, guys in the gym. You don't have the fans. You don't have we praise Anthony Edwards now for raising his game in the playoffs because he's silencing crowds, or he's making guys like Josh Hart are getting hustle plays and getting the crowd involved. You didn't have that in the bubble. It didn't feel like the fan engagement was there, obviously, because there weren't any fans. It didn't feel like there was really a connection. At that point, you're just watching through a camera, guys playing pickup in the gym, and even though these are, like you said, the best of the best doing their job at a high level, it was a little hard to just sit there and watch and appreciate that greatness when, you could have been doing better things at that point in time.
Right. Moving over to the 8th ever TAP Player of the Week. This is a guy that, he really helped his team close out a team in the second round when they were down 3-2. A guy who stepped up his level of play. And then not to mention he opened up this third round with a loss.
Yeah.
But I'll let you take it over. This is the 8th ever TAP Player of the Week.
Yeah, Jason Tatum is our Player of the Week. I gave it to Jason Tatum, obviously, because like Steph had a losing record when I gave him the TAP Player of the Week, but he had 50 points in the Game 7.
History.
Exactly. Jason Tatum just had 51. I was watching a game. A lot of the points were, the Philly was already down 20. It was the fourth quarter, but it doesn't matter. He had 51. He scored the most points in a Game 7 history. His record is 2-1. And it looked like it was about to be 3-0 for about 2 quarters of that game last night. And, even in the fourth quarter, Celtics made a little bit of a run to get back in the game. And Jason Tatum, unfortunately, had 3 terrible turnovers.
Yes.
Kind of proved to everybody that he still has some consistency issues. He still has to wake up when the moment's brightest. He has to play that level, 48 minutes, 7-game series. He has to do that. But we could talk about that another day because I feel like I always slander Jason Tatum sometimes.
I mean, we'll get into it later. But, I got some stuff about Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I do too. That it came up yesterday. But Jason Tatum, he is Player of the Week. He averaged 33, 10, and 4, and regardless of the outcome of last game, he's been terrific.
Yeah, I mean, I had Steph when Steph made history, and we had him as the TAP Player of the Week. I said in that video that if you ever put up the most points in a Game 7 in NBA history, you get the TAP Player of the Week. So it was a default, right? Yeah. Jason Tatum, doesn't matter if he was 0-3. He's going to get that remark as like you said, a lot of it was in downtime. But when we look back in even 2 years, we're not going to remember that.
Right.
We're gonna see Jason Tatum most points in a Game 7 NBA history. But moving over to one of the main segments here today, as we're going to run through 6 total, 3 winners, 3 losers from this past week of NBA action, right? Whether if it was the draft lottery or whether if it was the playoffs. We're going to run through just 3 winners, 3 losers, and we're going to start here with our winners. This is kind of a mixture of the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich, a team that we had as winners because they won the lottery, right? They have Victor Wembanyama. Sure, there's questions about his size and his durability, but you have the guy with the most potential in the draft class, and with the developmental team that San Antonio has, I mean, they're probably one of the best teams that can get the most out of Victor Wembanyama compared to a team like Houston, which we'll get into here. But winners, Greg Popovich, San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, obviously, like you just said, the Spurs have far and away the best developmental.
They have the lottery ticket.
Exactly, they have the best developmental team in the league. And it's not like you were just saying we're just going out on the limb saying, hey, they're young talents. I mean, they've had David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, and all of those guys are superstars. DeJounte Murray, he's an all-star level player. And DeJounte Murray wasn't he like the last pick in the first round? He was like, I think he was late.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up, but yeah.
Yeah, he was late first round. I know that he had character issues, and the Spurs turned him into an all-star level point guard, a franchise point guard for them. Obviously, he's not with them any longer. But I have no doubt that they can mold Victor Wembanyama into that typical San Antonio big man, all-time great, if given a chance. And Greg Popovich, he was there from David Robinson. He's there with Victor Wembanyama. He has years and years and years of experience. And he's been with superstars, whether it's Tony Parker, Manu, like I said, Kawhi, DeJounte. He's been around those stars. He knows what he can get out of Victor. This is the best case scenario for team and coach.
Right. Interesting to note here, I looked it up to fact check. DeJounte Murray was the 29th pick, so good call there in the 2016 draft. Also interesting to note, the Spurs took Derek White with the 29th pick in the 2017 draft. Wow, yeah, both of those guys are now off the team. But regardless, I mean, winners, San Antonio Spurs, self-explanatory. They got the lottery ticket. How much money is on that lottery ticket, right? The losers here, though, the Detroit Pistons, if I can talk, and the Houston Rockets. The Detroit Pistons, for me, were a loser because simply they had the number 1 odds to get the number 1 pick. They're in a great situation where they just need that guy that can put them over. I think they have the supporting pieces in Jaden Ivey, in Cade Cunningham, right? If they could have paired a Victor Wembanyama with that, with his potential, with a playmaking point guard that can put him in the right spots, I think they would have been probably a playoff team next year, as crazy as that might sound. But the other losers, we have the Rockets. Yeah. Not only the video of Victor, celebrating the Rockets not getting the number 1 pick, but again, now they kind of fell out of the what are they? The number 3. They're number 4. So they're not going to get one of the top 3 guys. Neither is Detroit, as Detroit fell from 1 to 5. These teams aren't going to get one of those top 3 guys in this class.
Yeah, and obviously, the way the odds were, it was supposed to stop tanking. Obviously, for the Pistons, that's hard to do when your best player plays 9 games and now it's out the rest of the season.
Right.
Which I'm excited to see how Cade develops. I think Cade is going to probably, at some point in his career, I feel like he's going to be a top 5 point guard in the league, just off of his size and playmaking ability alone. But he has that scoring. He can score when he needs to. The Pistons have a good young core. But it's up to their developmental staff. You don't get, you miss out on the chance, like you said, to get a top 3 pick to help boost your franchise. Now, development team, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can make Jaden Ivey better. Let's see if we can get Jalen Duren to expand his game. Let's see if we can, bring somebody, maybe a vet or 2 in and help us. You got to set small goals, so probably to play in. And Houston, like you said, Houston, they won 23 games. But Houston doesn't have a clear direction of the young talent they want to go. Houston, they've been bad ever since James Harden left. And they've just been drafting talent. And I know, obviously, when you're a bad team, you draft the best available talent. But at a certain point, you're going to reach a point where you have to make, okay, who do we want? Which young player do we want to build around? Which young player do we want to be our number 1? And we kind of, make our roster around that.
And it has to be Jalen Green right now.
Yeah, it has to be Jalen Green, but they haven't done that. Right. You go out and get Jabari Smith, who his primary.
He should be the guy.
Yes, yeah, he should be the guy. His primary issue though is he can't create his own shot yet. What do? You go get him to play with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. who
don't know what playmaking is.
Exactly.
Right.
They don't know what playmaking is. So now you have a defensive talented big and a stretch big who's just there to get 3 shots a game. Houston, they don't have the best development team ever, obviously. Hopefully, Ime Udoka can kind of turn it around and realize that Jabari Smith is your number 1 player, and Jalen Green should probably lower his role or usage. But Houston, obviously, with Detroit are losers.
Well, just so you guys know at home, for guys that don't keep up with maybe the prospects, there is a clear drop off after the 3. I think in any regular draft class, Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, or Brandon Miller, even with his off the court issues, all 3 of those guys would be clear number 1s, I think.
Yeah.
And in this year, just all 3 of them happen to be in the same class. Maybe it can rival one of the the 1984, the 2003 class.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's speaking 15 years too early, but we'll have to see eventually. Moving over to our second winners and losers. Winners, we have Darvin Ham, coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Losers, we have the pairing of Joel Embiid, James Harden, and maybe even just the 76ers organization, right? As for Joel Embiid, we talked about him a lot on Tuesday, so if you missed that, go check it out. But James Harden, news came out since that point that he plans to decline his $35.5 million player option because he wants to join a competitive roster and wants the basketball freedom to make a decision on where his career will most likely finish out here for James Harden. Hall of Fame career, but he just has never got it done in the playoffs, right? Yeah. Also, news has come out since that point that Doc Rivers has been fired. That happened right after we finished our Tuesday podcast. 76ers, losers for me.
Yeah, and like you said, we were talking about it after after the pod Tuesday when Doc Rivers got fired. When you go back and look at a lot of the leads he's blown, they weren't necessarily his fault in his career. One of those times he was up 3-1 as an 8 seed. They weren't even supposed to be there, and their best player, Tracy McGrady, gets hurt. Right. A lot of those 3-2s were against LeBron James when he had those aging Celtics teams. One of the 3-2s was against Kobe and the Lakers in the finals the year after they beat them. One of the 3-1s was when Chris Paul and Blake Griffin get hurt versus the Houston Rockets, and your best player is Austin Rivers. Right. The 3-2 2 years ago, Ben Simmons is petrified of shooting the ball in the last 4 games of your series, ends your series.
A lot of unfortunate things have happened
here
for Doc Rivers.
Exactly. And then, this most recent one, your 2 best players combined for 24 points and atrocious shooting. They don't even look into it. And, James Harden's sake, I don't understand how, we don't hear a word about his relationship with Doc Rivers until they lose the game, and then all of a sudden it's, I don't want to come back if Doc Rivers is the head coach. Now they fired Doc Rivers. Now James Harden isn't even going to come back. And to make matters worse, Daryl Morey, the 76ers GM, said, Joel Embiid was surprised by the firing. He had a really close relationship with Doc, and he was like, my job is to tell him that anybody else we go hire, you have that same close relationship to. So not only have you fired your head coach and lost your second superstar probably, you've also strained your relationship with your best player because you fired the coach without, even letting him know. So obviously, like you said, Philly
is New York a landing spot for Joel. They have the assets. I know there's not many teams out there that would have the assets for Joel Embiid, but I mean I can imagine a Jalen Brunson, Joel Embiid, some of the other young pieces they have there in New York being maybe a dangerous team.
What about Portland? Portland could probably give you. They give you Shaedon Sharp. They have to give you a lot, but I see Shaedon Sharp, Anthony Simons. Maybe you could throw in
6 first-round picks.
Yeah, Nurkic. You have the 3rd pick now. You have the 3rd pick, which is you can get Brandon Miller or Scoot with those guys I just mentioned in multiple first-round picks because Portland is in a win-now mode. And if Philly is going to lose James Harden, Philly, you're bypassing the rebuild process. You're into the play-in, late playoff team with that type of roster, I feel like, because you still have, Tyrese Maxey and Tobias for, a year. So
yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, you guys got to stay tuned because we're going to have some, probably 3 total mock drafts here for the NBA lottery. And one of those we're definitely going to do with trades.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe we go absolutely insane and have Joel Embiid get traded. But the winners, we have Darvin Ham, a guy that, to me, has proved me wrong. Throughout the season, I wasn't really sure on Darvin Ham. He's a rookie head coach. Most times with rookie head coaches, LeBron is really the head coach of the team. He's the one, pointing out certain adjustments or making just certain adjustments, telling players what they need to do. Darvin Ham, though, I think in that first game against the Nuggets, for him to make that switch from Rui to Jokic and have AD roam, that really brought them back in that game on top of the offense that they had from Austin Reeves. But I believe that just to make a switch like that, to me, it was huge that he's willing to make adjustments, and his adjustments changed that game.
Yeah, and like you said, he's proven me wrong as well. And it's even going back to last series. The the Lakers come out, steal game 1. They get blown off. They get blown out game 2. It looks like, maybe the Lakers have run into their opponent. Darvin Ham, he made the adjustment necessary to beat this team, to have a chance to basically close out the series going back to Golden State. Obviously they didn't get the job done in Golden State, but they came back down and they blew the brakes off of Golden State in LA.
Right.
Then he admitted it's his fault. He started out that small lineup, but then he puts Rui on Jokic, and so he makes AD that help defensive monster that he can be. And next thing you know, we have a competitive game that the Lakers, LeBron's walking into a 3 to tie the game up with 40-something seconds left.
Right.
Obviously Darvin Ham, he's really earning his stripes this playoffs. He's showing why he was a top head coach candidate. And I'm happy for him. It's not easy coaching the Lakers, let alone LeBron James and Anthony Davis,
right.
And Russell Westbrook earlier in the season. So
he's gone through a lot in his first year as a coach.
Yeah, for sure.
And right now he's on the verge of maybe going down 0-2 here to the Denver Nuggets tonight. But our last winner and losers, our last winner is the Portland Trail Blazers. We kind of mentioned it there. This one is strictly, they got the number 3 pick. They now have, the reports already came out that they want to trade it and build around Damian Lillard.
Which is crazy to me.
Which is crazy because what is he, 30?
33.
33, right? Damian Lillard, I don't know if he's, at this point, if you're even going to have enough with that number 3 pick to build a competent team around him, or at least a dominant team around Damian Lillard.
Right.
Unless you make that a Joel Embiid splash. If that happens, now we're talking business. But right now they're in a weird situation that, even if they do, let's say something crazy happens and Brandon Miller turns out to be the best player in the class, you're still gonna have to give him 2 or 3 years to develop, and at that point Dame's 35, 36 years old.
Yeah, and it's just crazy to me. Obviously at this point, they should have been traded Damian Lillard, but you need Damian Lillard. In a way, to me, he's probably the most babied superstar. Probably, and I want to say in the league. I can't think of really another superstar who doesn't get any slack for anything he's done in his career.
Probably LeBron.
Maybe. Well, LeBron does get a lot of hate too. LeBron
does he do anything right?
No,
to
he
the
doesn't.
NBA media?
He doesn't. He's John Morant to the media. But I can't think of another superstar who we know he's a superstar talent. Dame is a top 75 player of all time, and he gets babied to the extreme. And I don't really get it a lot of times. Dame could have chosen to leave this franchise a long time ago. Instead, he keeps signing these max extensions. Then he gets frustrated when a small market in Portland doesn't have the money to go get him somebody else, or doesn't have the assets to go get him somebody else. It's Damian Lillard's fault. He's keeping his team in purgatory. They're going to be mid. They're always going to be mid because you have Damian Lillard, but you don't have enough to help him. I think it's time for Portland to move on from Dame, trade him to a contender, and then start your rebuild. You have the 3rd pick. This would be the perfect year for that. You can get Scoot or Brandon Miller, like you said. These are those are 2 guys are number 1 picks in the other draft. And you still have young players. You still have Shaedon Sharpe. You still have Anthony Simons. You can re-sign Cam Reddish. You can trade Nurkic and get some younger assets for him. Maybe a younger big. You still have pieces to boost your rebuild if you do trade Dame. Instead, they're going to build around Dame for 3 years when Dame's 36. He might fall off next year. I don't think he will. But
and the way we're talking about him, it sounds like they're losers, right? But due to their situation, but. I think no matter what happens with Dame, he's had a lot of cryptic messages over the last week or so.
Yeah.
If you have the number 3rd pick, let's say you bring in Brandon Miller, he's the projected 3rd right now.
Right.
A guy that could easily be the number 1 player in the class. So you already have your alpha. You already have the guy that you want to build around if Dame decides to leave. Like you mentioned, you have all those supporting pieces, all those young pieces that still have a lot of potential.
Right.
So you're in a great position.
Yeah,
you can have that roster there with Brandon Miller and this young team. With 6 first-round picks,
exactly.
or with 4 and 2 pick swaps. So I think they're winners because of their roster flexibility.
Yeah, and exactly, and then the fact that they, if they had the 1st pick, it'd be even crazier because then it's like, okay, what does Portland do? Do you draft Victor, which you probably do, regardless of if you want to build a team around Dame, but like you said, they still have that 3rd pick that they can trade for another star, maybe Julius Randle from New York. So we'll see what happens, but. Yeah, you want to go into the loser, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, now I got this. I'm going to kick it off here. But breaking news here as Rafael Nadal, or I think that's how he pronounces it, he just won the French Open. So, or no, he pulled out of the French Open with a hip injury for all you tennis fans out there. Hopefully nobody bet on on Rafael Nadal, right? But moving over here to our last loser, as it is Adam Silver. This is someone that you wanted to put on the list here as I would just basically say that this is because of the John Morant situation, with how poorly he handled the John Morant situation the first time around. We know that Adam Silver is super huge. The whole motto with him in his time as the NBA commissioner is player empowerment. He wants players to have the freedom, and he wants them to get the absolute most out of their time in the league, whether if it's money, whether if it's flexibility with where they can play basketball. Adam Silver has been big on player empowerment, and this time he went too loose on John Morant. He was too light on the punishment, and due to his player empowerment things, that's just what happened. And now John Morant, he came back and he made Adam Silver look like a fool. Not only was he only suspended for really 2 games of basketball, he comes back and he has another offense with the same issue. And Adam Silver is now in a position where he's probably going to have to go against his whole motto as the NBA commissioner and suspend Ja for probably half the season, maybe even the entire season next year.
Yeah, I think what they're saying is that the minimum suspension as of right now is probably half the season, just because
which is
Adam Silver personally is so hurt because he sat down with Ja in his office and tried to explain to Ja the severities of what he was doing, that he's it's not illegal, but you do represent a business now. You do have a public image that that they want to uphold. And Ja violates that two months later. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was basically just going to say that is half the season 41 games? Or is half the season going to the All-Star break?
Right.
Because the All-Star break is sometimes, 50, 60 games in. After the All-Star break, some teams have 19 games left, some teams have 26. What is going to be half the season in their mind? Is it going to be exactly the 41st game and then he's ready? Or is it going to be the All-Star break? I would imagine the All-Star break.
Yeah, and like he said, he's preparing. He's expecting the worst, too.
Right.
So that means everything that they've been talking about, he in his mind, he's probably sitting there like, well, it's not out of the question that he gets suspended the entire regular season and comes back, for the playoffs, which that would be severe. But, in their mind, they're like, we didn't give him a severe enough punishment the first time.
The Nuggets or the Grizzlies are good enough. They're probably going to make it without Ja.
Exactly. Whether that's a play-in or, a 6th seed, they can do that. But, I wanted to put Adam Silver on the list because of the John Morant situation. But also there have been, moments leading up to this that we have seen maybe he goes too lenient on a punishment and backfires on him. The Ben Simmons situation.
Yes.
Ben Simmons basically forced his way out of Philly. Sat out, didn't play a game for them. Philly is forced to trade him for James Harden. Obviously, it worked out in their favor because they did get James Harden, but we're seeing how that plays out now where James Harden is potentially leaving. There's the James Harden, there's the Kyrie situation where Kyrie, Kyrie doesn't play that season with the Nets. And then all of a sudden the Nets bring him back. There's whole drama. There was unclarity around when the team suspended Kyrie, the Nets did earlier this season. And, they told him he had to do those tasks to come back. There was unclarity from the league or Adam Silver about what was going to happen. There's been multiple situations where Adam Silver hasn't put his foot down as the NBA commissioner to prevent some of these problems from happening, and it's backfired on the league on more than one occasion. And this Ja incident is just the latest incident of him trying to, I guess, kind of baby these stars or try to give them more power or try to just give them life advice instead of giving them a suspension. Or giving them a punishment, which would help maybe change their behavior.
Right, I think it would definitely change. The players would not, go as crazy as they have been in these last couple of years if the punishments were more severe.
Exactly.
It's $25,000 is a lot of money to the average person. To the NBA player, the average NBA player, that's pocket change.
Right, that's what you
get. Especially
to
the superstar.
That's what you get in one half of playing.
Right, basically. And so they don't care about that. It's a technical, whatever. Or if it's, off the court stuff, we don't care because we have the money, we have the facilities to easily pay that off, right? Plus 10. But that's it. Our 3 winners of this past week, whether if it was the draft lottery, playoffs, we have Greg Popovich and the Spurs, Darvin Ham, and the Portland Trailblazers. The losers, we have the Pistons and Rockets, basically lottery losers there. We have the duo of Harden, Embiid, the whole Philadelphia 76ers organization right now, and Adam Silver. But moving over here to the Game 1 reactions, These don't have to be too in-depth. We're going to run through the games, but we're going to start here in Denver. The Mile High Advantage. They took a Game 1 lead after surviving the comeback, and they stay undefeated at home. They're now 7-0 at home. And for Denver, I have some notes here. Like I wanted to do some research into it, and that's the reason behind this title for the topic. But the Mile High Advantage is real. I did some research, and I looked into what some of the star players have had to say in interviews or whatever when it came to playing in Denver, right? We know that the high altitude, whether if it's the Broncos Stadium or the Nuggets, the air is thinner there in Denver, and it subsequently, it makes it more difficult to breathe. And in the NBA, when you're running up and down the court for 38 minutes, playing 100%, you need to breathe, right? You need that air to get into your lungs. But I watched an interview with Carmelo Anthony, my favorite player of all time. He was drafted by the Nuggets, and he played there for about 10 seasons, or 7 seasons or so. Regardless, in an interview, he said that when he left Denver and he went to New York, and then when he would only return once or twice a year with whatever team he was on, it felt like his lungs would burn playing 30 minutes a night. They also said that on the broadcast there. Mark Jackson, when he said he played there in whatever year he was playing, they said that he said that his lungs would feel like they're burning playing as many minutes as he would in a regular city, on a regular court. So the home court advantage, basically, what I'm saying here, is real. The Nuggets took advantage. Jokic had a crazy first quarter, ended the game with like 31 points, 21 rebounds, and 14 assists. Absolutely insane. I texted you in the middle of that game, and I said, do we want to have the first ever repeat player of the week? As Jokic was killing it. Yeah. But Jamal Murray, he pitched in with 31, KCP 21, Bruce Brown 16, which those two are
legacy games for the both of them.
Right. We don't expect that to happen again, but they had it. Those guys stepped up. The biggest stat from this game for me is that Michael Porter Jr., he put up a career high 2 assists. Let alone 2 passes, right? Michael Porter Jr. is out here killing it. Really, the catalyst to the offense of Denver.
Cavs should have drafted him back in 2018.
Yeah, he would have been our lead assist guy.
Exactly.
Darius Garland,
Kevin Durant, who?
Right. But I will say, after watching Game 1 of the series and just the overall playoffs, is my overall, like, the kryptonite to this Nuggets team, as if you watch Game 1 and you never watch the Nuggets play, it's this team's not going to lose. This team's the best team in basketball, which they might be, right? But their ability to keep a lead and maintain just a decent level of play when Jokic is off the court is not there, right? And it's like, sure, Jokic plays 36 of the 48 minutes, but when he's off the court for those 12 minutes, the Lakers stormed back. When Jokic wasn't on the court, this Lakers team was always able to, like, piece by piece, able to come back, and shorten this lead. Excuse that here, but and then we move over to the Lakers, right? It's crazy to think that that Anthony Davis, we talked about his playoff, mishaps or whatever, right? But it's crazy to think that he put up a 40-point double-double in this game, and it was overshadowed. Like, we didn't care that he put up a 40-point double-double. They were down early, but like I said, when Jokic went to the bench, this team slowly came back. They got a lot of firepower from Austin Reeves, and the biggest, I guess, head-scratching moment here for me in this game was that how they were double teaming. I don't know how close you watched, but this in the first half of this game they had Anthony Davis on Jokic, right? Anthony Davis, they figured out, can't guard Jokic one-on-one because probably no one can here in the NBA. So they started double teaming and recklessly. And the first thing you think of when you think of Nikola Jokic,
it's passing out of the double team.
It's passing, right? Just his ability to play make. But the Lakers, they did come out in that second half, like we talked about with Darvin Ham. They adjusted. Rui took the Jokic assignment. Anthony Davis was able to roam, and things got interesting. What are your just overall thoughts of Game 1 here? As we know how the game ended there. Just overall thoughts on Game 1s for both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, like you said, Jokic is so dominant. You can't guard him one-on-one because you're going to need somebody. Unless you have somebody who's literally going to stop him from, or enable him from shooting the ball or passing the ball, you can't guard him one-on-one. He's going to get his shots up, and because he's so dominant in the paint, you're always going to need somebody to shift over and play that help defense. Obviously, like you said, Darvin Ham adjusted that in the second half by putting Rui, who he knew couldn't guard Jokic, but he left AD able to run that weak side defender and play that, that help defense. You always say Giannis is probably the best help defender in the league. Right. AD, is probably top 2.
Right.
So I like that adjustment by Darvin Ham. Also, like you said, Austin Reeves came alive, especially in that fourth quarter, helping hit some big threes, tie the game up. But yeah, on the Nuggets side of the ball, they need to figure out, after watching that game and after watching how the Lakers were able to come back and how Anthony Davis was able to impact as a help defender and especially get the rebounds as a help defender. The Nuggets need to figure out what to do with Aaron Gordon on the offensive side of the ball. Having him in that dunker spot is more of a negative than a positive against this Lakers team who, when you have Anthony Davis playing help side defense, now you're asking Jokic to either, Jokic he's not going to make any threes with Rui where he's posting up Rui. So now you're asking him to, to try and get Aaron Gordon involved, and Aaron Gordon's on the block right there with Anthony Davis. So it's going to be a hard task. It's how do you keep your shooters like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Michael Porter Jr. hot. Obviously, the Lakers will be able to counteract that game 2, I believe, once they, especially practicing this new defensive scheme that they've had.
Right.
And then, how do you keep the involvement of guys like Bruce Brown? Bruce Brown had 16. He had 9 in 6 minutes to start the game. And on the Lakers side of the ball, you figured out a blueprint. And Mike Malone, this is what surprised me. They asked Mike Malone after the game. They were like, what do you think about Rui guarding Jokic? And he was like, well, it's as if we haven't seen guys like Rui guard Nikola before. We'll be ready. I think Mike Malone kind of just, unless he's doing a crazy good bluff job, I think he exposed to the world that he may not know exactly why Nikola Jokic, why the Lakers defense was so good in that second half. He didn't even think about mentioning Anthony Davis help defense, and that might cause trouble for the Nuggets if Mike Malone still hasn't figured that out by tonight. Because that Lakers defense can be very stifling. The Nuggets need to figure out what to do when Nikola Jokic goes to the bench, how to keep the guys who are really good like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown good next game. And the Lakers need to start with that defensive scheme and not play small. They can't play small, at least when Nikola Jokic is on the floor. And I think that you need to bring D'Lo off the bench as well. I think, right. I know they were saying that D'Lo might have a problem coming off the bench. I don't think D'Lo cares. When you're this close to competing for a championship, you're going to do whatever it takes to help your team. Dennis Schroeder is probably the better option right now. Bring D'Angelo Russell off the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. As like we've mentioned, game 2 is tonight. And it's hard to believe that Darvin Ham adjusted last game. Mike Malone didn't. It's hard to believe that Mike Malone, as one of the best coaches in the league, is not going to adjust this game here in game 2 and make the necessary adjustments to win the game. But I want to ask you, as a coach, let's say you're Mike Malone, or let's say you're Darvin Ham. Put it this way: you're Darvin Ham. Would you rather let Jokic beat you? Would you rather say, you know what, we know Jokic isn't a natural scorer, but we're going to go out there and let AD just guard him, and we're going to let Jokic put up a 50-point triple-double or a 50-point double-double and let the role player, or take the role players out the game. Just let Jokic beat us? Or on the flip side, would you try and take Jokic out of the game as much as possible and live with KCP and Bruce Brown putting up 20?
I let Nikola beat me. I let Jokic beat me because if you're expecting everybody else to show up, they probably will, especially at home. And that's more shots around the perimeter. That's more threes. That's better looks for some guys than they're used to getting. That's if a guy's in a slump and he has a good game, that's how you break him out of the slump and you change the series because their X factor starts playing well. We saw in Phoenix. Nikola had 53 points and 12 assists. He only had 7 boards, but he had 53 and 12 against the Suns, and they lost that game. And that's because that particular game, they're like, all right, let's let Jokic beat us. And, we have Kevin Durant, we have Devin Booker. We'll come right back at them on when we get when we get the ball back. So I think that's probably the best choice of action, especially when you have Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Hey, Nikola, can you beat us? Can you put up 50 and will your team to a win? We'll see. Now you have to, now you have to stop AD from scoring, another 40 ball. Now you have to stop Bron from scoring 25. So
right. I expect LeBron to have a big game tonight, especially with his late game decision there, as he fumbled the ball on one possession and the possession before. Yeah. He took a 3, which seemed forced, right?
Yeah.
But the next time we have a podcast, next Tuesday, we're going to be at game 4 in this series. What? I'll ask you this first, really quickly. Who needs game 2 more, the Lakers or the Nuggets?
I think the Lakers need game 2 more. the Lakers are really good at home, but I don't. If they can't get one game against this Nuggets team on the road, they're not going to win. I think it's better to get that game earlier in the series than later, because earlier now you're going back. You're going back home saying, okay, we can take care of them at home. Now we're going back to Denver 3-1, and you're back in the same situation you were last series. They got it done in that one game versus Golden State when they were able to come back. Leave their home going 3-1 back to Golden State. If they can do that with Denver, obviously they're going to be in a supreme position. But this Nuggets team is scary because I feel like this Nuggets team it can come back from a 3-1 lead. So you need any advantage you can get.
Absolutely. And very quickly, let's say 4 games are done by next Tuesday. Just what's the series by then?
4 games are done. I'd say if the Lakers are able to get this game, I'd say it's 2-2.
2-2.
I think this is going 7. I'd say 2-2. Lakers are probably going to go 1-1 at home. Especially if they beat the Nuggets this game. I don't think there's any way that the Nuggets lose game 3. Lakers are going to come back out and respond game 4.
Yeah, I mean, my only motto here for the Lakers is we both have it at 7. Mm-hmm. Just like the Warriors and Kings series. Warriors were a terrible road team. They only need to win 1 road game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you said, it's better to do it early than in game 7 when Steph had to put up 50. But you just need to win 1. You just need to win 1, and the series doesn't start until the road team wins a game. But moving over here to the last series, the Eastern Conference, a game that we saw last night. But Miami, their magical run continues. They went into Boston, had a 46-point third quarter, and took a 1-0 lead over the Celtics. They're the number 8 seed, and like I said, their magical run continues. And Jimmy did it all. I mean, he had 35 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, and 6 steals, looking like a my league player, right? But, I will say, watching him last night, the ankle looks to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
But I will say the best thing I saw last night from the Miami Heat was Bam. Yeah. Right? I think Bam, he only had 20 and 8, which is not, eye-popping numbers, but he provided that all-NBA defense that we know Bam can do. Absolutely, right? And we got him from a consistent basis from the start of the game to the end of the game. If we can get that Bam, I think that changes the series. I still would probably give the edge to Boston in the long run. But if we get that Bam, I mean, this series is more competitive than we thought here early on. But the biggest story to me in this game was that he got 15 points from 4 different players. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, and Kyle Lowry combined for 60 of their 120 or so points. So that's huge when you get bench production from a bench that doesn't have much depth. At least not many would see it that way. And like I said, not to mention a 46-point third quarter. But moving over to Boston here. Boston, they did it again. Whenever it seems like this team is heating up and catching their fullest stride or playing at their fullest potential, they have a game like this.
Right.
There's so many questionable moves that they had in this game, and we're going to start here with Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla, when the Heat started the third quarter on a 13-1 run, he refused to call a timeout. Marcus Smart in his post-game presser said that that Joe Mazzulla doesn't like to bail us out. He doesn't like he wants us to play through, those runs. He doesn't want to call a timeout for us to come out and do the same exact thing. But as a rookie head coach, I mean, I don't know how long he's been around the game of basketball, but Phil Jackson would do that. You have Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches of all time. He does that. Steve Kerr does that. Doc Rivers or even Greg Popovich. The historic coaches of this game know when to call timeouts. It's not I don't care. You go and prove it to me. You can play better than this.
Yeah.
You're a rookie head coach. Know your role. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a first-year coach or a coach like at Greg Popovich's tenure, right? Being in the league for 58 years. You call a timeout when your team needs a break and you need to reset and stop the other team's momentum, especially at home.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You got to call the timeouts, and I understand where he's coming from. The Celtics, they're so good, they're boneheaded. I feel like a lot of times he does call those times. He probably got his experience from the regular season by calling those timeouts, and then the Celtics go out and do the exact same thing. So in his mind, he's probably like, "Whoa, I'm not going to do it in the playoffs when every timeout matters, but you have to do it in the playoffs." Because it was obvious that the Miami Heat made adjustments, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That first half, it was a layup line for the Celtics, especially Jason Tatum. They got whatever they wanted in the first half. They come out, the Heat adjusted, and it's like the Celtics didn't have a counterpunch. Joe Mazzulla, he waited too long to call that timeout, and then it's like that entire second half, it was like a struggle on offense for the Celtics, it felt like, until the last few minutes of the fourth quarter when they were able to get some threes, or I should say, I guess the beginning of the fourth quarter when they were able to get some threes, it was like they couldn't really get that many stops either. Joe Mazzulla, he definitely, that was one of the points for me going into the series. It's can he be better than a rookie head coach usually is in this situation? Obviously, he's going against Eric Spoelstra, but things like calling timeouts are things he can control. You have to do that when you're the coach.
Yeah, I mean, rookie head coaches at this point, usually, get overshadowed by one LeBron James because LeBron does that. He has a history of bringing rookie head coaches to this point.
Yeah.
And, this team doesn't have a LeBron James.
Right.
No disrespect to Jason Tatum and them, but I would take LeBron James by himself probably over the Celtics roster. But that's no shade, as the biggest head-scratching thing to me was Peyton Pritchard, a guy who hasn't played all season long. He gets minutes, and not only does he get minutes, you're a 6'1" guard that is known for not playing defense your entire career. Go out there and guard their team's best player in Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler, from the first 30 seconds that Pritchard, not clocked into the game, but he started playing in the game, the Heat immediately went to a switch. Jimmy had a fade on him and scored. This team, they abused Peyton Pritchard for all 13 minutes that he played in that game, and I don't understand. I get switching things up, maybe throwing a different rotational piece. You could have had Peyton Pritchard on the court and had him guarding Kyle Lowry. Yeah. I would have had no problem with that. But when you put him on the other team's best player,
right,
a guy that's not known for defense, man, that's like putting Isaiah Thomas on LeBron James. Here, we know you're not a defensive player, but you're go out there and guard LeBron James. Go out there and stop him.
Exactly. And then you put him in the game, he's a shooter. You don't run any actions to get him off a screen or, one of those open corner threes. You don't run any actions. You're saying, hey, go play Jimmy Butler, and, if you get a wide open three, you got to make it. That doesn't make sense. Obviously, we've seen coaches put in somebody and they become the X factor of the series, whether it was Lonnie Walker for the Lakers,
right,
different players for other teams. We've seen it before.
Danny Green, first part that came to mind.
Exactly. Or Lamar Stevens earlier in the season for the Cavs. But usually those guys are wings, or they're bigs, or they're
catch and shoot guys.
Exactly. They're guys who are going to knock down that open three, and they're going to give a little bit of effort on defense. They're not undersized stretch guards. I agree with you. This was a Joe Mazzulla masterclass.
Right, and not to mention Jason Tatum had 30 points. Didn't attempt a shot in the fourth quarter. He played 8 minutes in the fourth quarter. Didn't attempt a shot. I mean, this is a guy people would think is a superstar. This is a guy that, he got the Tap Player of the Week. We know the potential's there, but you can't disappear like that when you're the best player on the team.
And I was talking about this with some people yesterday, and it was actually a good point. Jason Tatum, it feels like since he's gotten into the league, Jason Tatum was kind of the player that the media and everybody else wanted to put that, he's the next, he trained with Kobe. He's the next Kobe. He's got that Mamba mentality. He's got that, it feels like Jason Tatum is more of a forced media superstar than he more so shows it on the court. He has his moments. I'm not taking anything away from him, but it feels like, it feels like the media has been hyping up Jason Tatum more than I feel like. And I used to be a huge Jason Tatum fan, and even back then I'd be like, I like Jason Tatum. I hope he develops into that perennial all-star, superstar type player. But I couldn't see it back then. Obviously, he's developed now, but he's still way too inconsistent, I think, to earn that superstar name. And it feels like, he's kind of had a right, because his team has always made deep playoffs runs. It was that first run where obviously Kyrie was hurt, and it was Jason Tatum and Scary Terry. Then, they've made conference finals since then. And he's been the best player on the team. So by default, obviously he's going to get more credit than anybody else. But it feels like Jason Tatum, for his career, he's been spoon-fed that all-star, that superstar title. He's put in the work, I guess, to improve his stats year after year. He was fourth in the MVP voting, so obviously, I sound like a severe hater, but I don't know. To me, it feels artificial, his rise to the stardom. He's a good player. He has the skill set. He's just not consistent enough for me, and it feels like it doesn't get talked about enough to me sometimes.
Yeah. Same questions here I'm going to ask you is, by next Tuesday, Game 4 will be next Tuesday, next time we record. So out of the next 3 games, one, I'll ask you, who needs Game 2 more?
Obviously the Celtics.
Okay.
I feel like if they don't win Game 2, they might get swept.
Right. And so by Game 3, I would have to agree with you. The Celtics need this game more than anybody, and I think the Celtics team for some reason plays better when their backs are against the wall. But 3 games. by next Tuesday, what's the series by that point?
3 games by next Tuesday. I'd say 2-1 Celtics. I think
I would have to agree.
And we always say if the Celtics can play their best basketball, there probably isn't another team that can beat them. Maybe the Nuggets give them a run for their money. But I think it'll be a bounce-back game for everybody, Game 2. And I feel like, that Game 2 will expose a lot of things that's wrong with Miami. And going into Game 3, I think those fixes are more roster constructed than player type. So going into Game 3, I think they get another win.
Yeah, if this team doesn't win more than one game, Joe Mazzulla has to get out of there. There's no excuse that.
Still better than JB Bickerstaff.
I would even argue that, right, with how he coaches the Celtics. But that's going to do it for today's show. You see the topics on your screen now. We talked about a lot, from winners and losers to Victor Wembanyama to Iggy to the Warriors. And, of course, the Game 1 reactions. Any last thoughts before we get out of here? As a long weekend ahead of us, we have some more basketball every single day here in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. But we're back Tuesday.
Yeah, this week's been very eventful. A lot of news both days that we've done the show. So, I'm happy that we got the lottery results. Now, obviously, we're going to see Wembanyama photoshopped in the Spurs jersey every day until his rookie debut. So
Summer League, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Well, I guess the Spurs practice jerseys are their NBA jerseys, so
right?
Yeah, you're right.
But again, that's going to do it for today's show. Go ahead and support us down below if you haven't already. We're an hour into the show, so obviously if you made it to this point, you do enjoy us at least a little bit, right? So go ahead and hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and tell a friend about the podcast. Share it with a friend, as if you enjoy it, I guarantee you they're most likely going to as well. But until Tuesday.
Yep.
Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy some basketball. And hopefully, both of these series go to 7, as I'm a selfish basketball fan. But we'll see you guys then. Have a great weekend.